I mean, with Beauty in the Fall, like, not to touch on too many of the songs at once, but like, for instance, we had been writing this record over the course of a long time. It started with Put You Through Me, and then Over It, and then High, and the rest of the songs just kind of inched their way there. Like, Entropy took a really long time. I think that was the last one that we got done.
Welcome back to another episode of The Record Process. This week, we caught up with the Nashville-based pop rock trio Arrows in Action, and we discussed the creation of their most recently released album, Built to Last. We go all the way back to the band's inception in 2012, and we see how the band's lineup has grown and evolved into the Brotherhood that it is today. We also get a chance to explore the meticulously planned branding and visual elements behind this album. We have a really great conversation with these guys about why artwork and the colors associated with different things are so important to telling the story behind an album. We get an inside look from the band's vocalist, Victor Veramontes Pattison, about the revealing nature of how he associates different colors with each track on the album. And finally, we talk about the importance of valuing each other's ideas and approaching songwriting with an open mind, and how it's that mindset that ultimately allowed them to unlock their best work to date. And it's all coming up right now. The task of making a great album is rarely a solo endeavor, and companies like Audio Movers help empower musicians and creators by streamlining their workflow together and enabling them to make more efficient and informed creative choices. Famous for their groundbreaking collaborative plugin tool, Listen To, Audio Movers have made it possible to stream audio files in real time directly from your DAW to anyone, anywhere in the world. And recently, Audio Movers have expanded their dynamic plugin suite with Inject, an impressive audio routing solution that allows users to route audio in and out of any channel in your DAW. And alongside Inject stands the newly updated Omnibus 2.0, a software application that turns your Mac into a virtual patch bay, making it possible to route audio between applications and hardware seamlessly. And you can get 25% off Inject and Omnibus right now by heading to audiomovers.com and entering the code RECORDPRO at checkout. With over 1 million plus artists already relying on DistroKid to get their music into Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming platforms, you may have heard of it before. But if you're not yet familiar with just how easy DistroKid makes unlimited uploads and retaining 100% of your artist royalties and earnings, now is the time to finally see for yourself. And that's because they've just supercharged the functionality of their platform with the recent release of their new iOS app. The app allows you to upload new releases, check your streaming stats from Spotify and Apple, edit release metadata, and you can even set push notifications that will alert you every time you've earned royalties that you can withdraw right from the app. In addition to getting your music uploaded to DSPs faster than any competitor, DistroKid also has a ton of great promotional tools that can help you market your music better. You can view and share hyperfollow links and allow fans to pre-save your songs in advance, get the credits and lyrics for your songs instantly uploaded, and you can do all this for just $22.99 a year. So head to the App Store and download the DistroKid app for free now. So we have Jesse, Victor, and Matt of the band Arrows in Action. This is going to be a fun one, guys. Y'all have a new record, huh? That's what I hear. A little birdie kind of came in and told me that. And Tom and I are really interested because I'm gonna be honest with you right now. We are taping this before I think the greater populace has gotten their ears on it, but Tom and I have heard it.
Awesome.
And it bangs, guys. What's
groovy.
Yeah, it
Thanks.
really is. There, you know what, Tom? That's accurate. There are some grooves on there. There's more than one. You guys packed them in there. So I almost don't even know where to start because from back to front, there's a lot going on here, right? But why don't you, for anybody that's listening that might, for some reason, not be familiar with y'all and maybe some of the previous releases, let's bring them up to speed and start off kind of like letting everybody know how the band formed and what y'all have put out into the greater scene and music world up until this point.
Jesse, Matt, you guys, one of you want to take?
Jesse, you started the band. This is your fault.
Yeah, okay.
Jesse, this is your fault, I think. I have been told it's your fault.
Yeah. So I formed the band Arrows in Action technically in 2012. A very long time ago, my freshman year of college. And I just didn't really know what I was going to do in college, but I knew I wanted to start a band. I had a band briefly in high school, so I put up flyers around. Matt and Victor did not see those flyers and did not join the band at that point in time. So 4 other guys and me made the band Arrows in Action. Victor, I actually met I think it was that same, like the end of that year, 2012 or early 2013, something like that. And met him. His band was playing like an acoustic opening set at a local venue, opening for I Fight Dragons. I met him there, said, "Hey, we should play a show. I've got a band." And so Arrows in Action actually ended up opening for Victor's band, Foul Play, at their EP release / final show.
Wow, very nice. The Swan Song debut. We love that.
Isn't that just how it goes, right?
That's short and sweet. Here's an EP. Goodbye.
Honestly, that's pro tip number 1. Always leave them wanting more. And we mean that from like a career standpoint. That's great. Well played, Victor.
Make
The
it
Foul Play
impossible for him
reunion
to
tour
get
is going
more.
to sell really great.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. So then, the singer at the time wasn't able to commit to the band, so I asked Victor to join the band. And then over a few different band member switches, Matt started filling in on bass. And then he was like, "Hey, I think we can really do this, but like we got to commit." And so it was Matt, the new guy, really making the call like, "Hey, like we need to like do this. And then we're like, "Oh, yeah, okay." And then we all moved into a house together, and then COVID happened. So we hit to the internet and started promoting on Reels and discovered TikTok, and now here we are.
And we sort of ended up writing like the 10 tracks. Like we wrote like 10 demos that ended up kind of becoming a lot of Be More through that time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me get this straight. So how long had y'all been in this lineup and iteration before you moved into a house pre-pandemic? Because that's a big step, right? Some of us take years, maybe decades, for a relationship to begin cohabitating. Y'all were like, "No, we're in. This is it. Let's live together." Right?
Yeah.
But all jokes aside, that's kind of like a serious step. So at what point did you know that you're like, this feels like the lineup and it feels like we have something here?
We had so Matt had joined playing guitar. Like he had been playing bass with us for a little while at that point, but he like officially became like our guitarist, I want to say like the end of 2018, something like that, Matt, right?
Something like that.
And after that happened, like we had our buddy Tony who was on bass, and we just kind of hit the ground running really hard, like recording an EP that ended up being called Hell in Paradise. We played as many shows as we could. We ended up, doing a little run with the home team through Florida. And after all of that, just how well things were going, and like even though we were like at a really small scale, we knew that we were onto something really tight, and we were like, this is the dream team. Why would we not? And this is like the best test of if this is going to work. So August of 2019, we decided to move in with each other, and it was the best thing we could have done given the pandemic coming up, because it just locked us in with each other, and the only escape from the pandemic was to work on music and to hang out with each other.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, you guys did it right. That worked out. you guys get an inside line on this thing, or what's happening? You're just like, listen, I got an email. We got to talk about. All right, hear me out on this. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's pack it into a house. All right. Also, grab some toilet paper on your way over. And that's great too, because I think, so you had done some touring, right? With also the home team, Love Daniel and those dudes. That's awesome. You had gotten it out. You had stress tested the lineup, in real time, in person, right? You saw how things were working together. And I think that's important. And also, a big thing about figuring these things out is, and I think you see this a lot more often now with remote collaboration across the internet and, different online communities, making it very easy to make some pretty great stuff without ever being in person. There's a lot more to being in a band, and sometimes you don't figure that out until you get in some close quarters and some sticky situations, right? A lot of which are kind of done in a van, just through long drives, right? It's like,
totally.
What are we going to be like when our minds are really beaten down? What are these people really like, and how do they function together? And I think, so I love that after that touring, y'all were like, hey, this feels good, but then you kind of knew you got to bring it home, literally and figuratively. So you jumped in a house together, and look at that, everything shuts down and you've got some time on your hands.
Yes.
So you started writing, I presume, as there wasn't really much else to do other than the obvious social media time spent. So what did that start to look like? I mean, you would put out, some material before that, but what was the goal, or what was the thought? Was it just, we got to pass the time, or did you have any, ideas? What did you feel like you wanted to say?
I feel like during that time, we were very lucky to already have some stuff in the chamber, because right before everything was shut down, before there was any inkling of what was going to happen, we had recorded 4 songs in Nashville, and like just going on a trip up to where we live now, when we still lived in Gainesville. We recorded This Time, Close Enough, Honey, and Failing on Purpose. So I think when things initially locked down, the thought process was, okay, well, we can release these very slowly with lots of content and make them last the whole time, and then come out of the gate with something else. And then we started writing for that something else. And I don't know if you guys remember, did we have a conversation of like, we wanted it to be an EP, or did we talk about it being a full length at some point, or like, did we not decide? I feel like we didn't. Yeah, for Be More, I feel like we didn't decide what it was going to be until we were like halfway through working on it.
We didn't really go into it with a plan, if I'm being completely honest. Like, we sort of just like sat down and just started writing as much as we could over the course of like March until I think like September. And we had like 9-ish demos in addition to like the 4 songs we had ready to release, like, Close Enough, Honey, and Failing on Purpose, and This Time. But we sort of like just started writing as much as we could. And then when we went to write with our buddy Dan Swank in Nashville, we ended up kind of finishing out these 6 songs and one interlude that ended up being on Be More. And like, there was never really a discussion of like, let's shoot for a record. It was more so like, these are 6 awesome songs, and 6 songs is not an album, it's an EP. So let's put this out.
Yeah.
So
I'll check that math afterwards, but I think you're right. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So that was the EP, right? That came out in 21. So what happened with that EP? Because that kind of sets the stage for what comes next, and the album Built to Last that we're here and going to really dig into. But I imagine the feedback of those songs played a part in where your heads started turning, right?
I feel like an important piece of that puzzle is, we've already mentioned him, Dan Swank. So Be More, we wrote with Dan. Some of it were the demos and we're sort of done, and he kind of finished them with us, and some of it he wrote with us as well. But we went to like a cabin in Kingston, Tennessee. Is that right? Yeah, Kingston, Tennessee. Rented a cabin, and just sort of, we were there for I think 7 or 8 days, and just set up a little living room studio in the cabin, and that's where we tracked except for the drums, all of Be More. So that was our first time doing anything like that. Everything else we'd done in mostly like a studio setting. And this
Yeah.
was like, for all of us, sort of like a bit of a dream scenario of getting to, go to this beautiful location. And it was so pretty, like on this river, and just our manager, who is our friend that we met in college and has been doing it with us, he fronted the money for the cabin. He was like, I believe in you guys. Like, I want to do this. You need to do this. So having him push us to do that, and then getting us all there and kind of like making that happen, that was our first time kind of building something like that. And we did Built to Last in a similar way. So I think that like first step of doing that and learning from that is what really set us up for the next one.
Yeah.
Did you rent out another cabin for Built to Last? Like, was it the same cabin? Was it a different cabin?
We actually we wrote Built to Last in so many different places. A lot of it was written here in Nashville. A lot of things were just written like we had the opportunity to go out to a house in Palm Springs in September, late September of last year, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. It was just such a cool place to like be in a different mindset. We kept joking around like these songs sound like the desert. There's something about the desert. And then we also ended up staying at my aunt's cabin in Lake Arrowhead, California. So it was a cool like going from the desert like situation going straight to a cabin where it's like 68 degrees in September and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah. Wow. So you had a lot of vistas and views, it sounds like, baked into this record, which I think is interesting and important. So it's, which, obviously you said before you'd done some of the more conventional, like in a studio, environment, writing and or recording. But it's interesting because we, on this show too, we talk a lot about environment and how that can kind of really impact the headspace that you're in.
It really does.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly enough, it's, we joked about like, was it the same cabin? And I was so ready for you guys to be like, yep, definitely.
No, we leveled up with this one.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting is like, even with like, so with Wonder Years, I've done 4 records now out in the same like area, out of the same studio, pretty much out in like Garden Grove, with slight variations. But 2 of those albums, literally back to back, we rented the same house on the beach, like the exact same one from the exact, we were like, we're coming back. It was like 2.5 years later, we're coming back. I hope nothing's changed. I hope everything's as shitty as we left it. As long as it's still on the beach, we're good. But it was really interesting because we had, we knew what we were getting, and we had it. There was like the amount of variables that you can control sometimes are interesting and play into it. And we, the place we liked from a headspace kind of standpoint. But this is interesting that you got to expand on those locations a little bit. Did you notice? Do you think some of the stuff from one place to another? There's kind of a juxtaposition geographically there that you mentioned. Do you think you noticed anything different about what came out of those sessions and how they informed some of the ideas?
For sure. I mean,
Definitely.
like the songs like Beauty in the Fall and Seeing Red were like written in Palm Springs, and like there's just certain chords and like sounds in those songs where we would look at each other and be like, there's just something about the desert, man. Like it sounds like we made it here. And then with like songs like Checking In, we did at the cabin, and like those feel very like cozy, very like cute, very just like happy. So there was a huge difference. And to your point about like kind of going back, we are going to go back to the Lake Arrowhead cabin because it was such a nice little slice of like seclusion.
Yeah. So I'm dying to know now. I mean, you put it out there. What chord does the desert sound like?
Matt, do you know?
Don't ask me.
The thing that when I would play it, you guys would start making that joke. It's just like the melodic minor scale, so you can hear like melodic. So it's like Queens of the Stone Age uses it a lot. You hear it a lot, and trying to think of other examples off the top of my head. I don't know why they're not coming to mind. But yes, melodic minor.
Kind of a very like almost like a kind of pentatonic-y, riffy kind of. Pseudo westerny kind of like cowboy-ish vibe, right? Okay.
And like with Beauty in the Fall, we were like, we're shooting for Radiohead meets 5 Seconds of Summer.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Okay. Well, honestly, see, that makes a whole lot of sense, right? I'm glad I asked too, because then, And I think that's actually what's interesting is you talk about like influences and why music sounds the way it does. It's just like, it maybe it's a chicken or the egg thing, but you think about like old westerns and stuff like that. You're just like, I don't know, that kind of just does sound dusty, but like, is it because you've seen it married with so many visuals over the years? Probably a little bit of that, but I always find it interesting because but I appreciate that. Okay, Tom, noted. If we're ever going for desert sounds, we're going melodic minor.
That's like right up there with like a baritone guitar with tape echo and spring reverb. That is Twin Peaks.
That's it
for sure.
Yes,
just like
there you go.
Yeah, like
Yes.
that is it. So like I totally get that, and like that association is so strong, and like whether or not it comes from something else or it comes from like the pure landscape, it's still a unique experience for y'all to be writing that and how that influences your writing process in that state of mind. So that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
I was going to add, part of it was like just driving out, we fly to LA, pick up our rental, get Victor, get Dan. I actually forget how we all flew in, but eventually we all group up and we're all, we're driving out to Palm Springs, and it was just like, I don't know, I feel like we were all just on cloud nine. Like, we really get to do this, like it's
absurd.
This is the job. It was, we've only been doing this full time for a year and a half or a little less now today. So then it was even shorter, and we were just like, wow, we really get to do this and go out to this place. And we get to the house, and it's like, it's beautiful. There's a pool there, and it was provided by Milk and Honey, a publishing company that Dan works with.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, we don't belong here, but we're gonna do it. So we were also just so ecstatic, zero pressure, just having the greatest time and writing these songs too. So it was very low. I don't know if any of us really felt much pressure there. We were just having a great time popping in the studio and just throwing whatever we had into it.
Yeah, the ability to experiment.
It's almost as though that was the intention, huh? It's almost as though somebody at the top said, we think this is going to work out well.
Yeah.
Well, it seems that they were right, because the songs on here, apart from being very catchy, have a lot of, well, there's story, obviously, as there always is, but talk to us a little bit about, kind of taking these like the different pieces of inspiration. Like I said, like what did you want to write about, and where does that come from, especially having a collaborator like Dan, right? And not just as a producer in the conventional role, but also kind of being there to lean on in a collaborative effort of writing the actual songs and the composition of it. Where does an idea maybe take one song that might be a favorite example, from those Palm Springs sessions, and what did that look like? How did you have a starting point for it, or did you just begin whipping something up from scratch? Because I think I'm always fascinated of like the origin of kind of that spark, and then how it gets molded and twisted and turned. So maybe, is there any really good example from that group?
Yeah, I would love to, if you guys are down, I'd love to talk about Beauty in the Fall. I feel like we don't talk about that one much, but that was one of the first ones we did in that house. And it was a marriage of like two different chord progressions that Victor had been playing around with, that we decided to combine, even though they're not in the same key. The verse to the chorus is two different keys. But I think we had referenced a Tom Petty song that did that. That was big, and we were like, well, look, if like this huge pop song can do it, then we can do it. And then there was a lot of Five Sauce references thrown around, and then we talked about Radiohead for guitar tones. And then Vic, I know you and Graham came up with the place and the story that this song was going to fill, like as you were writing the lyrics. I feel like that would be a fun one to get into.
Yeah, I mean, with Beauty in the Fall, like, not to touch on too many of the songs at once, but like, for instance, we had been writing this record over the course of a long time. It started with Put You Through Me, and then Over It, and then High, and the rest of the songs just kind of inched their way there. Like Entropy took a really long time. I think that was the last one that we got done. But when specifically, like before we went out on the trip, I had worked on I had woken up one morning and written in like 20 minutes the lyrics to Built to Last, and like I had just been going through it that week, and I had these lyrics and I was like, this is the record. Like this is what the rest of the record's about. Like there's the lines like, if all we are is who we have, I guess I'm making amends, Built to Last. And it very much felt like the final track on the record. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I know what we can do to build out the rest of the record. And Beauty in the Fall sort of took the space of like, after you listen through like Wide Eyes and Seeing Red, you're kind of like, oh, this guy's like a little angry, or he's like, he's like taking back what's his, or he's putting his foot down. And by the time you get to Beauty in the Fall, you're sort of like making your peace with like your anxiety and your fear. And like it's sort of like I've played the part of every tortured soul for far too long. Like this is the come down from like that really like hot like putting your foot down moment in Seeing Red, for instance. So it very much served as like a come down from those songs too.
Yeah. As music fans, we know that the records we love are more than just something we listen to, right? Over time, they become a part of us and a part of our identity, and nobody knows this better than the people at Rockabilia, the best online shop for band merch, hands down. For more than 30 years, Rockabilia has offered the largest selection of officially licensed music merchandise available around the world. They do it all, from authentic concert t-shirts to band hoodies and posters, and even accessories from your favorite iconic artists. They do hats, backpacks, bags, pins, belts, you name it, they have it, as well as exclusive access to limited edition designs that you can only get through them and the artists that they partner with. Maybe you missed the merch table at a recent show and you're looking to treat yourself. Maybe you're looking to treat somebody else in your life with a gift card. Or maybe you're looking to outfit the children in your life with some new gear, whether they have 2 legs or 4. Yes, they even have accessories for your pets. They have it all, so just head over to rockabilia.com or follow the link in our show notes, and for a limited time, all Record Process listeners can receive 10% off their order just by entering the code ROCKRECORD. That's all one word, ROCKRECORD, at checkout. So we are extremely proud to have the people at Oxford Pennant as an official sponsor of the Record Process again here on Season 5. And I'm here to tell you about their new pennant and flag customizer. It's real simple. All you have to do is head to oxfordpennant.com to make your own custom flag on demand. Simply type in your favorite phrase, inside joke, lyric, whatever you want, approve the preview, and Oxford will print, sew, and ship your flag straight to you from their beautiful headquarters in sunny Buffalo, New York. Creating and ordering your own custom flags from Oxford Pennant is actually so easy and affordable now that I'm concerned I'll have to start paying off my co-host Tom just to prevent him from putting every dumb thing I say this season on a flag. Seriously, I wouldn't put it past him. But with great power comes great responsibility, as we know, and that's exactly what Oxford Pennant is giving you here. All you have to do is head to oxfordpennant.com, search Customizer, and let the designing begin. That kind of lends itself right into maybe a question that usually comes a little bit later in these conversations, but also anecdotally it has been viewed, at least through my experience, and especially with Wonder Years, we have a whiteboard that we've gone as far as like kind of charting the energy of a track listing and or track flow and dynamics and kind of envisioning the whole journey of an album. But I think especially too, where if you know where you want to go, right, start with the end in mind sometimes is kind of like how this seems to have come about, which is really interesting in how it informs the rest of that. And was that something that then you knew, like, as you were writing these songs, you kind of knew where you wanted them to go? Or did that just naturally they revealed themselves as those puzzle pieces after the fact?
I'd love to let the guys speak on this too, but for me, it was sort of just like, okay, we got an idea. Now let's see where it goes. And that's sort of what let it be so fun and crazy, was that it was like, who knows what it's going to be, but this is the goal.
Yeah, we were dialing it in as we were going. I remember the whiteboard kind of came out.
As it always does.
After that trip, as it always does. Victor has a really fun way of categorizing songs as we work on them that also informs a lot of the branding with like colors. So assigning colors and moods to each song well before they were done, but just if we had even a vibe going.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these are a lot of them, half or so are like instrumentals that will start at ridiculous times with Dan, right? And then in the morning, see what does it make you think about or feel, and start writing to it. I think we had finished like 4 or 5 songs before we decided on a plot, and then we did start writing to it, and we realized that those songs had places in the story of leaving your hometown, of realizing you're not emotionally available, why you're not emotionally available, and then all these different things happening to you, and by the end finding peace with it and deciding to check in with loved ones and that kind of thing. So I think we did write to a theme, but it did take maybe halfway through the process before that started happening.
Well, now what can you go into like a little bit of like what these colors, or what like an example of like this like tagging, like I don't know, dig into the minutia of like, this was seafoam green, this was magenta, like where, like how detailed were these colors, or was it just like a general like?
And what's interesting, before you go into that, for anybody, just because this is purely digested in podcast and audio form, for anybody that can't see, I am in no way surprised that of the 3 of them, Victor has a very rich gradient color background happening. So the second you said that, Matt, I was like, yep, I'm all in on this.
Of the 3 album colors, if you notice, it's purple, orange, and red. He lives in them,
and he's thought it out all the way through. The thread continues straight through the record process. Listen, you're in the right place, my friend, because we do appreciate that level of detail. So please, Victor, extrapolate on this kind of idea and where that comes from, and how your mind works when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, so we've always had like color's always been like an association. It's very much been like, I've very much taken after like the water parks, I guess, like approach of like assigning colors to certain things and like, assigning emotions to it. And like, so with Hell in Paradise, it was like very like dull, like muted blue and like a red, and like just to kind of show like, it was, it very much fit the hell sort of vibe, but then having it be very sad and like somber blue with like, the songs like Close Enough. And this time we went with the green and purple. It just sort of fit our vibe. Jesse's favorite color was purple. I'm pretty sure that was around the time he had gotten a purple drum set. We loved the lime green sort of vibe. Those were a little less like, intentional, I guess. It was more so like, these are cool. This will be good branding and they're fun to look at. When we got into Be More, I thought it would be cool to do 3 colors, one for each of us, but like not before, like with that, it wasn't really assigning colors. It was more so just being like, isn't this a cool gradient? This really like bright, like summery, like, very neon kind of thing. So that was orange, magenta, and like a teal. And then for this record, just because we kind of did it on Be More, we decided to do it again. And again, Jesse's always been a big fan of purple. Matt has been dyeing his hair red more, and I love how it looks when it's red. And I have always just loved, like, again, with the desert tones and the desert sounds and everything, I've been seeing a lot of visuals that were like, very like deep purples with reds and orange, kind of a gradient, and seeing like, oh, it's very deserty, very sunsetty. That's cool. So we just really liked how it felt. It was very warm, but also a little like dark, I guess. Moody. And like, it was funny because my favorite color has always been red, but I was like, nah, red looks great on you, Matt. I'm gonna start doing orange. So
oh wow, honestly, that's a real friend right there too. Giving up his favorite. Wow. I think this is really interesting, and really interesting opportunity too, because of how clued into the branding and the through lines here that y'all seem to be with this and the previous releases. I'd love you to talk about who came in to do the artwork, or it looks as though obviously they're like they're pulled from photos and or sketches. Talk about that process, because I think a lot of times it doesn't get talked about as much as it should, because it's the visual, like quick shot representation of trying to encapsulate the entire album, and there's so much on it, right? And so it's almost a seemingly impossible task, but yeah, a lot of thought goes into that. Who worked on that with you?
We have been looking at this photographer, Zach Pig, for a long time. He works with Nightly. I know he's been out with like Mitchell Tenpenny recently, and we've just been a huge fan of his stuff. We reached out to do photos with him, and he was an angel on this earth to work with. He was great. So he did the photos, and then Andrew Cook ended up doing the artwork. If you want to speak more on that, Matt.
Andrew Cook is someone that we've been a fan of for a good while. He's worked with a lot of artists, done merch spreads for Rage Against the Machine, for My Chemical Romance, for just a lot of people. We really liked his style, and he also happens to be a business owner here in Nashville, runs our favorite coffee shop. So just sort of a interesting
big
character
fan
that
already.
we've looked up to. Yeah, exactly right. We had the mutual friendship through Dan, and just hit him up, and we're very lucky that he was down to do it. He did the actual graphic design for the album cover, and for the insert that's going to be on the vinyl as well, tour flyer, everything like that. And we really liked his workflow and everything. It's always a good sign when a graphic designer says, "Send me the record first. I want to get a feel for it and just see what the vibe is, and look at these colors that you guys are talking about with each song and everything." So
that's amazing. So talk a little bit more about when you sent him the record, right? What were the initial thoughts, and what did he come back with you as a first step? Because I think this is another thing too, that to get something like this, a lot of bands don't always, or maybe even people that aren't necessarily musicians or don't go through the whole process of putting together a physical package and artwork and things like that. This process and the appreciation for it might be lost, but I think this is what is that. So you give the record to him and say, "Here you go." A person that works in a very different discipline than the sonic one that y'all have just spent a lot of time on, right? What's the first reaction? What does he come back to you with?
I don't remember his first impressions of the record. I do remember one of the first things he said, though. We had sent him pictures of ourselves individually that we liked, and we thought it would be some sort of collage-y format, or maybe like panels with us on them, with each color to like individualize us. And the first thing I remember him coming back with after listening to the record is like, "Well, you guys do literally everything together, and you're a band. You're close. So we should make it a photo where you're all together and you're like very close together." So that is conveyed in it. And I really liked that he thought that hard about that. And then we ended up picking the picture that we did where we're like laying on each other and everything. But I don't know. Do you guys remember his first impressions of the album? I don't remember what he came back with.
I don't know if I do.
I don't know if he sent back like here's what I think on this or this. I think he was just sort of like, all right, cool, I get the idea.
He dove in. Okay.
He already started sending drafts at that point of what it could look like. Yeah.
Cool. So he just kind of knew and trusted, and knew that y'all were trusting him to kind of take a stab and start taking the swing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Since you sent him the record first, what was when you got something back, what was his interpretation? Just because or at least the gut interpretation, and how y'all had that thought process in mind beforehand of how it was going to go, and he was talking it through all of that. But what was the first draft?
The first draft was it was a lot darker than what it is right now. There wasn't much of a color grading going on in the back, and it was still really fucking cool, but it was definitely a lot more exaggerated, and the only things you could really make out were each of our faces. And it was a very dark background, very vibrant colors, versus what we ended up sort of putting that gradient in the background so you can kind of make out more of our actual bodies in the image and everything. But I think he was doing that to kind of highlight the boy band aspect that we're shooting for, that we had mentioned, where the idea with kind of going after our individual identities was to make it a little boy bandy, dark boy band kind of thing. And he really did lean into that. But then we ended up sort of making the changes that we did, and also asking him to sort of make it a little bit more like his retro style. He has this almost we were talking about Westerns earlier. A lot of his tour flyers and t-shirts to me look like movie posters for old Western movies, like spaghetti Westerns. So we're like, can we get a little more of that going into there with fonts and things like that? But and then the text on that first version also looked like a Tarantino movie. It was huge and long, and so it did have some of those elements too. It was spookier almost. I don't know.
I was just saying, it wasn't too far off from where we landed. I remember the first thing we got back was this is sick. We were cool. We just got some nudges from here, like, which was, it's always great.
At this point, was the music complete? Or did like you get it back and you were like, oh, this informs some like changes to the mix, like here and there?
I'm pretty sure
he didn't get final drafts of all the songs actually, so that is kind of funny to think about.
Cool.
Maybe subconsciously somewhere it did, but we sent him like nothing was mastered yet. I know that, and only like half of them had final mixes. So he was working with an unfinished version for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned that like even the first draft, right? That he takes back. Obviously, it's it's not exactly the final product, but you maybe start to see it. It's maybe like one or two like steps on to one side or the other with all the elements. And the reason I always find that fascinating is because it's not to say, and we talk about this a lot when it comes to a mix, right? Getting mixes back, or even we just talked with another artist who ended up having a person that they had worked with in the past mix a record, and then realizing, oh, this isn't the right person for this record that we did. You know what I mean? Like, and then they found somebody else that kind of just gravitated towards and understood that the vision for that record and where they had evolved as a band. But it didn't mean that the first mixes were bad. They were by a legendary, mixing engineer. So no doubt, like they were incredible, but it's almost like I think about it in the lane of like parallel universes, right? Where there's maybe a version of this record that exists as the first draft of the artwork, and that's probably amazing. But the version that needed to come out is the version that makes it through the filter of all three of you in this case, right? And that's where I think the real kind of artistry comes in. Is we talk about, and you guys write as a band, and there's only
live
three
as
of
a
you.
Band.
Yeah, live as a band. But yes, but well, also I'm highly jealous because there's half as many members as I have in my band. So I assume that means the writing process is half as arduous, which sounds great, but I don't know. Each their own. There's probably other challenges in there as well. But I say that because what I think I've learned, and what I'm wondering if you guys think about this in the sense of like, no, not this part, or I don't really love that, and then somebody else says, well, damn it, that's my favorite fucking part of this, like this one. Like I don't want it to go right. All those things kind of come up. But I think the lane is what gets through the filter of the three of you, that ultimately makes it. And there might be a lane where, there's, the line that Victor had that maybe somebody else is like, I don't love that, but there's that line paired with, the first draft of the artwork. And that is probably also a great record, right? How do you guys deal with that? And do you find, do you find that like the compromise, has become stronger amongst you, or because the communication stuff and the three of you, we talk about, it being like very close and tight knit. I think that's a really interesting thing. I'd love if you have any thoughts on that and how that's evolved even on, up until this record and even through this record.
I feel like we've definitely gotten a lot better about communicating while writing. Like specifically, like you had mentioned the moments of like, well, I hate this. Well, I really like this part. That's actually my favorite part, are the most interesting moments, because then the person who's like, I hate this, is like, well, there's something valuable here because you see something in it. So I have to figure out how to see it and how to make it work for both of us. And those are the coolest moments because it ends up being something that neither of us really expected, and it still makes all of us happy.
I feel like we've gotten good at really like break. So for example, yeah, in a situation like that where it's like, oh, I don't like that, and someone else is like, oh, I really like that part, and then I think we've gotten good at kind of breaking down what a part kind of ends up serving the song, and we'll be like, okay, like why do you like it, or why do you not like it? And we'll get down to like, well, it's like I feel like the song, I feel the song's going down in emotion there, but that piece kind of sticks out and it's a little odd, and it's like, oh, well, maybe we can make that part a little softer, like, throw a little filter on it, or whatever it needs to be to solve both things. So it'd be like, okay, it still serves the purpose. It still does the thing that I like, but it fits in the section or whatever it may be. And I think we did that probably 1,000 times on this record of like, oh, well, we need to add, because it's not this is not there, and then we all just kind of jump in on it.
Yeah, our writing process is very yes and.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and
Yeah, there you go.
honestly, like those moments of the why does it work are my favorites, because we start getting into like vocabulary. That's where we start getting into like, well, it feels spooky, or it feels warm, or it feels less tense doing this, and we need more tension. So those are like my favorite moments where we start writing it like a book. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost never is there like is there a no? I don't think we've ever had no's, and if we did, they're pretty much gone. Like at this point, whoever's leading the charge on the song never says no. Someone will just turn around and go, I'm not hearing that, but let's try it. And then we sketch it. We make a rough version of it. We're very fortunate that Dan is very fast in Pro Tools and that we can get our ideas across through a guitar or a bass or whatever. And we always get to hear a version of whatever's in the person's head before we modify it or move on.
Yeah.
So that's always really fun because, like you said, parallel universes, there's so many ear candy background parts in all these different songs that were tried in different sections to see what builds the song the best. And with some songs like Checking In, we ended up just taking stuff out, and I think that that's really important too.
Yeah. I mean, the task of editing is really hard, right? Tom and I always joke about like the most important button for a mix engineer is the mute button sometimes, and knowing which things don't need to be there and are actually doing a disservice. It's not always additive. I think that's really wise. And I love, Victor, what you said about the vocabulary. And we've talked a lot about, building these songs, experimenting, and kind of doing that communication and breaking it down into, and using words to describe kind of sometimes like intangible preferences and ideas, which I think this might be interesting, or perhaps this will backfire on me greatly. But I wonder, I want to kind of take one last second to get inside each one of your heads and say, if you had to pick one vocabulary word to describe Built to Last, what would that be? And I'm wondering, and it can't be the same word. You can't just all agree on one word. Put your phones down. Stop texting each other. Okay.
On three, boys.
Yeah. But let's start. So let's go from left to right. So Matt, you are on my left. I'll start with you. Time's up. What do you have? What do you think? What's the one word to describe this record to someone?
I have to say eclectic.
Ooh.
We just tried so many different things, and no one was telling us, "Hey, this song doesn't belong on a record."
For
with this
better
song.
or worse.
For better or for worse, and we think for better. We want to be a one-stop shop, but also I think that every weird song has like a couple buddies that it makes sense with on the record, and so we thought, why not have Head in the Clouds and Seeing Red on the same album, right? Like a fucking absolute radio pop happy-go-lucky song and a song with screaming and 2 tempo changes and like a breakdown. Why not? So eclectic for sure.
Wow, honestly, and I realize this, Jesse, you are next, but now I realize I should have had you like Jeopardy style write your answers down beforehand.
And
now
like,
you can change them, and this is totally unfair. I'll try and go quicker.
I've got mine, and I will commit to it.
Jesse, what is it?
Mine is intentional, which it just goes through just everything we've talked about already, just the learning process from before and getting to come into this one and kind of have a plan. Even if it was more halfway through, we really, once we had it, we we're like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. And each thing, like Matt is mentioning, Head in the Clouds and Seeing Red, those were made and put on the album intentionally. Like that was not we have to rush this thing together. We were like, yeah, we want to do this. We can make it work. We can make it make sense for the album. And then all the way down to mixing and all the tracking and instrumentation and everything. It was all very intentional. And I think we've learned to be more intentional in all the little things that we do with the release, with the tour, with the band in general. So
right, it's very well thought out and very crafted. I mean, that much is clear. Even talking about the way you guys think through all of those, sewing those threads together throughout the entire album. That's awesome. Well, last but certainly not least, Victor, what one word would you use to describe this new album to someone?
Somebody else was listening to the record and told us that it was very balanced, and I like that a lot. I said, that's really nice of you to say that. That's the nicest way you could say a crazy eclectic record.
Okay.
Very balanced to the point where, like, to kind of touch back on what you have been asking about, like the colors and the songs and stuff, like each song has a color for me, like each song has a color based on the emotion it gives. Like Built to Last, Wide Eyes, Seeing Red are all like red because they're very much like put your foot down statements. Songs like Beauty in the Fall and like, you know, Put You Through Me are purple because they're like so like sad and just like emotional, I guess. And then the orange songs are like Head in the Clouds and made for this, where it's just this big like bombastic moment. So it was cool to assign colors to each of them too for me, because then it's like, okay, there's 5 of this one, there's 4 of this one, there's 4 of this one, and there's 5 of this one. So that felt kind of balanced.
Feels like a balanced color palette. I love it, man. What a great way to wrap that all up. Gentlemen, this has been very fun and very informative. Congratulations on the record. Where can everybody follow along with the three of you and everything you're making as you put this out? And what else do you have coming up later this year?
You can find us on every social media platform at Arrows in Action. Nice and easy. And then the album drops May 26th, and the tour is July 5th to August 11th, doing almost all of the U.S. and a couple Canada dates.
Amazing.
Well, have fun. Stay safe, and congratulations again, and good luck with everything. We're rooting for you. You're welcome back anytime. We very much appreciate it, guys.
Thank you so much. Yeah, seriously. So cool.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Dude, thanks for having us. This has been a pleasure.
Cheers. What a fantastic opportunity to have Matt, Jesse, and Victor all together on this call. I love that we get to see how they kind of developed their own language and their own shorthand amongst themselves that creates a different way of viewing the process, right? So first and foremost, instead of a rather judgmental approach to yes or no voting when it comes to ideas, they seem to have developed more of a yes and style collaboration method that you see a lot in improv. Going along with whatever your collaborator gives you in the moment and seeing how you might be able to make it work instead of fighting against that energy. That's why I love the idea of trying something twice, no matter what, because the first time it's going to be very different, so that's going to be jarring, so you might dislike it for that exact reason. But the second time that you try something, you might actually start to get a glimpse at what that idea could become and not just what you thought it was. And instead of trying to overly articulate a vision through musical or technical terminology, the band started adapting a system where they describe songs based off of the colors they feel they evoke. And in doing that, we actually start to find that less can breed more because it gives your partners the space to translate the meaning of what they're downloading. Sometimes capturing the true intent, the true essence of something is more important than a word-for-word translation. So I hope you're able to translate the essence of what you heard in this interview into something that can bring value and meaning to your work. And thanks once again for spending your time with us right here on
The Record Process.